Sometimes cousins can be close like siblings, and that means the same sort of rivalries can develop between them. And while we're on the subject of families, there are occasions where a compact crossover might not offer enough space, but then a 3-row is just a bit too big.
And that's where something like the Kia Sorento comes into play, because it's bigger than something like a RAV4, although maybe not as big as you might think. But more importantly, it has an extra row of seats that might not be enough if you have more than 2 kids, but will be perfectly fine for when the in-laws are in town.
All of that applies to this redesigned Hyundai Santa Fe, which happens to be the Sorento's corporate cousin. Go figure, these two are strikingly similar on paper, but it's out on the open road that a true winner emerges. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Okay, Jody, let's start with the similarities. These things are built on the same platform. They also have an identical wheelbase, which is only about 85 millimeters shorter than the Hyundai Palisades and the Kia Tellurides.
Okay. That's kind of surprising, because the Santa Fe looks so much larger.
I know. It's kind of one of those things. It's visual tricks. It is bigger than the last one, which probably helps, in all those horizontal lines as well. It's interesting to me that Hyundai went back to a 3rd row. Remember, not the last generation Santa Fe, the one before that, you could get a Santa Fe or a Santa Fe XL.
Yep, I remember those days.
So now you've got a 3rd row back in this thing. It does make it more functional.
Can you fit back there?
I can fit in the 3rd row, but we should be real about it. These are sort of emergency purposes, and this applies to both the Santa Fe as well as the Sorento. If you do have more than 2 kids, probably not the vehicles for you.
Yeah, I think most of those families are going to end up using the trunk space more than the 3rd row anyway, and that trunk space is huge.
It's great, and you know, that's another one of those things where not great when the 3rd row is in use. Actually very small. I think there's like 357 liters in the Sorento and a little more than 400 when you take a look behind the tailgate of this thing. That's kind of like a small car's worth of cargo space.
Right, and the 2nd row, plenty of room.
Oh my God, in both. And cargo room as well as passenger space, there is plenty. 1st row too. I mean, I feel really comfortable up here.
Yeah, and so I also noticed that this one has a bench seat back there. Is it available with captain's chairs?
You can get captain's chairs as well. That's something else we should talk about, is that this is a lower trim. This is only, I think, the 2nd from the bottom. Whereas if you look in that X-Line Limited that we're driving, the Sorento, that thing is the 2nd from the top.
Got it. So the other similarity we should talk about is the powertrain, because they both have the same 2.5 liter turbo 4-cylinder, right?
Yeah, in most of the lineups. Now, there are some interesting differences. So it's a 2.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, 281 horsepower in the Sorento, 277 here, which I don't really understand, especially because they make the same amount of torque, 311 pound-feet. And those 4 horsepower, I mean, they're meaningless.
You won't feel the difference anyway.
You definitely won't. Something we should point out, though, there is a hybrid powertrain available with the Santa Fe, not with this XRT trim, but it is available. It's a 1.6 liter turbo. And then if you look at the cheapest Sorento, that has a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, but it's naturally aspirated. So it's not going to feel as punchy. With this turbo, these things have tons of pull.
Let's see it. Oh yeah, that's pretty good.
I feel super confident passing and merging. The basic stuff. I'm not looking for a performance SUV here. I'm just looking for something that feels good and you don't feel like you're really taking your life into your own hands trying to get around a slower vehicle on the highway.
Right, and even packed up with all your family and all your stuff, it should still be more than enough.
Absolutely. Now, these also use the same 8-speed dual clutch automatic transmission, but what are your thoughts on it?
This one seems pretty smooth. Really? No? You don't think so?
No. See, if you notice really low speeds, it'll have that kind of shudder, that hesitation that is common with these transmissions. And something else I noticed, when you have the ignition stop start and the auto hold function, so that function where you can let your foot off the brake but it'll keep the brakes applied, when you go to pull away from a stop, it really lurches and it has this weird hesitation that feels like a more exaggerated version of the shuddering with the transmission.
Right. I feel like once you're at speed, though, things are pretty good.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it really knows what to do. It knows when to downshift. When you add a little bit more throttle, it'll do what it needs to. There are also paddle shifters in both of these, so if you want to take control of those gear changes, you can do it on your own.
Cool. What's the fuel economy look like? Because they're so closely related, I wonder if the fuel economy will also be the same.
Okay, this is another interesting point. So this is the worst of the bunch in terms of its official combined average. It's rated for 10.8 liters per 100 kilometers. A big reason why these all-terrain tires that it rides on. It also has a little bit more ride height, although it's negligible. But if you look at the Sorento, it's rated for, I think, 10.3 across the lineup. This is 10.8. The rest of the trims with this turbo motor are a little bit lower, and then the hybrid is much better. But in real world testing earlier this week, this thing was the champ.
Right.
We had it down to 9.1 liters per 100 kilometers.
Which is so good, and you are a much more efficient driver than I am, so
Your
maybe
lead
that had
foot lie.
something to do with it.
I mean, the people have to know. But the thing is, now, after a little bit more city driving, both of them almost in lockstep. Just over 10 liters per 100 kilometers, so close to the official combined averages, but I'm not super happy with these fuel economy ratings. Say what you will about these trendy soft roaders, but I think this XRT trim is the perfect finisher for the Santa Fe's boxy and rugged new look. Super cool. These all-terrain tires, they're awesome. Not too aggressive, but they do mean if you find yourself on a rough road, they will come in handy. But more importantly, they're not too noisy on the pavement. Now, this thing was designed during the pandemic, and it shows in some of the fundamental features here, like this massive tailgate opening. And Hyundai achieved this by moving the taillights onto the tailgate as well as the bumper. Seems great in theory, but in practice, little bit of an issue. These are so low, they make it difficult for other drivers to see. Anyways, beyond that, there are some reinforced roof rails, as well as some grab handles that are hidden into the C-pillar that help if you want to hoist yourself up onto the roof.
The Sorento isn't all new like the Santa Fe, but it was recently refreshed, so it's a lot more stylish and a lot more bold than it used to be. I love the look overall. That upright new grille looks fantastic. Those EV9 inspired headlights also look so sharp. And I also really love these blocky new wheels. They look great. And for the first time ever, the Sorento is now available with an X Pro trim, which is actually a better match for Dan's Santa Fe over there because it comes with a whole bunch of great off-road upgrades that make it more capable. It is also a little bit more expensive. The one I'm driving is the X-Line Limited, which doesn't come with those off-road upgrades, but it does get a lot of visual enhancements that make it look a lot more rugged.
And Jody, don't forget the paint for $250. This Wolf Gray is super cool, semi-gloss. I think it would actually look really good on that Santa Fe.
I agree. So now that we're in the Sorento, let's talk about some of the differences, because once we started driving them, we were both like, whoa, this is like night and day.
It is crazy.
And so one of the big ones is that I find that the Sorento just rides a lot stiffer than the Santa Fe. And I think it has a lot to do with those off-road tires that it has.
That definitely contributes. I will not dispute that, but I don't think it's as big of a difference as you might think on the surface. Now, you know, for people who don't know, it's the squishiness of the sidewall and the tread blocks, right? A smaller diameter wheel means a bigger diameter tire, which means more absorption of bumps, cracks, whatever in the road. That is very true. But I do find there's just more refinement. The execution, the suspension, it's that much better, a little bit smoother. This stiffness is more of a Kia hallmark.
Yeah, that's true too. Although I think the Kia also has a slight disadvantage because it's not all new, like we said, right? I think the next generation.
But everything's the same.
Yeah, I know, but I think the next generation they'll have more time to work out those issues, right?
Yeah, but I mean, this thing is only a couple years
That's
old.
true.
And the thing is, the platform is the same. The suspension is virtually the same. It's the tuning. And I think it's cool because this isn't a case of the Chevy Silverado and the GMC Sierra where they're carbon copies of each other with different badges and a few different touches here and there. You know, it's cool that they're each engineered to be their own vehicles, but Hyundai kind of has the advantage.
I think Hyundai also has the advantage too when it comes to the interior design in general. Like, I do like what's going on here, but I think that it just feels a little bit dated in comparison.
Okay.
Just look at this gear shifter. Like, when's the last time you saw one of these?
I prefer this.
I prefer it too, but they don't offer them a lot anymore, right? It's just not very common.
Now, I guess I don't disagree with you, although I find this one, and yes, it is because it's a trim-specific thing, this feels a little more sophisticated inside. You've got this stitched and perforated leather upholstery. You've got some stitching on the door panels. I think it's a nice package, but in typical Kia fashion, some of the plastics in here are a little cheaper. And that kind of surprised me, considering that's the XRT, that's a lower trim, and this is the X-Line Limited.
Right. Like, I don't love this like fake plastic wood finish. I don't think it looks very good. I do think it's very user-friendly, so I think it has that going for it. There's one thing that I don't quite like is that this touch panel flips functions between HVAC controls and entertainment controls, which I think is really annoying. In comparison to the Santa Fe, where it's all laid out. But also, I'm not a huge fan of those touch capacitive controls either. Like, I want physical buttons. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. I don't know why automakers in general have gone in that direction. Now, something else we should talk about with these widescreen touchscreen displays, they finally have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and that's the case here and in the Santa Fe. Finally, and I like how everything's laid out on this too. I think both of the systems are very user-friendly. Most of the time it's really easy to find stuff even when you're on the go, and I think that's a big bonus. You know what, going through this S-Bend is actually a good time to talk about the ride again. It's interesting that XRT, this is why I'm saying it's not just the tires. Right. Because there is more body roll here than there is in the XRT, which has those squishier tires, which in theory should be a little more roly-poly. The fact that this one is the one that rolls and tips and tilts more noticeably, that is what is the kind of indicator that it's more than just the tires that are the problem. The other thing that I wanted to point out is these seats. And this happens on almost every Kia car that we drive. We're like, our butts are starting to hurt. It's so bad. I don't understand it. They are just like cardboard. But not, like I said this in the Telluride, it's like stacks of brand new cardboard boxes. There's no foam here. It's so uncomfortable, and it's interesting to see how it affects both of us, because usually, you know, our body types being as different as they are and me being so much bigger and heavier than you, I'm usually the one who has those issues where you're light and like, you know, like the princess on the mattress and you can't feel the pee, right? But you even said it in this thing right away. You were like, man, these seats are just awful. Yeah, like I was driving it, I don't know, like an hour the other day. And after that hour, I was sore. It's so bad. I'm not trying to pile on the Sorento, but absolutely, that is a big problem. Now, we should talk about pricing, especially with these ones specifically. I know they don't align perfectly. You mentioned earlier that there is an X Pro model that has more of the features that you can find there. But interestingly, strategy is so different. Kia, at least in Canada, I'm not sure about other markets, but that X Pro sits at the very top of the lineup. But that also means it's like, I don't know, 55 grand before tax. That XRT that we're testing, it's 49 grand, which is still a lot of money, but way more palatable. Then you have this X-Line Limited, so the second from the top, and I think it's about 43 grand. So there's a $4,000 price gap here. This one has more features. Yeah. That's undeniable. But is it enough to justify 53 versus 49 in your mind? I'm not sure. I don't think so. And I think in this segment especially, especially considering families are finding things so hard to afford, I feel like that is too much to ask. To recap, we like the Santa Fe's more refined ride, as well as some of the clever and cool styling touches and the more comfortable seats it has. We don't like the way the tail lights are down on the bumper and the touch capacitive controls inside. When it comes to the Sorento, we like its new style, its user-friendliness, and how practical it is. We don't like how hard the seats are, some of the controls inside, or the stiff ride. If you don't always need 3 rows of seats, both of these SUVs offer the extra space without being too big. And overall, they're about as close as you can expect corporate cousins to be, but the Santa Fe has serious levels of refinement in its favor.
Definitely driving them back to back highlights the inherent advantages that the Santa Fe brings to the table, and it is the clear pick of the two. Now, that doesn't mean that the Sorento is a bad vehicle, but this thing easily comes out on top where the rubber meets the road.